President Buhari summons security meeting as efforts to tackle insecurity are ramped up nationwide. Governors urge to collaborate more with key stakeholders in security, and experts speak on widening the intelligence network as prevention is better than cure. Also on political update today, some parties are giving incentives to women and youths to participate fully and contest elections as they represent a larger chunk of the voting populace. Plus, a case for more disability-friendly processes from electoral bodies in Nigeria. I'm Fisayo Ogunfuyi. Welcome. An extraordinary meeting has been convened on national security. The meeting was summoned by President Muhammadu Buhari to critically analyze and find solutions to the prevailing challenges of security in parts of the country. In attendance at the crucial meeting are the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, Chief of Staff to the President, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Ministers of Defense, Interior, Police and Foreign Affairs, as well as the National Security Advisor. Others include the service chiefs and the acting Inspector General of Police, Directors General of the Department of State Services and the National Intelligence Agency, Director of Defense Intelligence and other stakeholders. Now, Governor Aminu Bello Masari of Katsina State has spoken against suggestions for the imposition of state of emergency across Nigeria on the security sector. The governor says the desired result will not be achieved under the prevailing circumstances.
The reality is the responsibility of securing this country is ours, all of us. We have a role to play, and we must play it for the sake of the country and for the sake of our children and grandchildren, not for the sake of the persons that are in office. I think we have to understand that whatever we do to restore security today, we are not doing it for one particular person or group of persons. If you say, okay, state of emergency, what do? We are having the same people, the same security agencies, the same capacities, and the same resources. So what are we talking about? We have a problem that everybody has a role to play. We better play it. Politics should be over. The security situation of the country is beyond partisan politics. It's a national concern for all of us, every responsible person in this country.
The National Executive Committee of the People's Democratic Party is calling for a national security conference as part of efforts to solve the nation's security challenges.
Nigeria project with security taking the center stage is #1 on the agenda table. The party's budget and the November 6 governorship election in Anambra State followed. In all, the need for Nigerians to eschew violence and shun divisive tendencies was advocated. The federal government was also advised to declare a state of emergency on security in the country.
This country belongs to all of us. And so we must take part, we must prefer solution. It is no longer politics.
Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State, on behalf of the PDP Governors Forum, reassured of their unity towards building a stronger party and above all, support to every effort geared towards making the country safer for all.
We are loyal to the leadership of the party. We are together as governors.
PDP minority leaders in the two chambers of the National Assembly, Senator Inaya Baribe and Ndude Lumelu, as well as Secretary of the party's Board of Trustees, Senator Adolphus Wabara, also reassured of their resolve to work in as a united front to move Nigeria forward.
Still on security, meanwhile, the Senate Committee on the Nigerian Army has resolved to meet with the Minister of Finance and Service Chiefs on Tuesday next week over the releases of funds to security agencies, particularly the Army.
The central issue for the interaction was to receive brief from the Ministry on release of funds to the Nigerian Army amidst rising insecurity in the country. The bone of contention, however, is the summary of budgetary releases to Operation Lafia Dole and Operation Hadarin Daji, we showed that it was 100% from 2019 to 2020.
2019, 75 billion was appropriated. The same was released 100%. If you look at the second line there was even a supplementation from the service-wide vote, apart from the appropriation, which was released 100%. We have released 19.7 for the first quarter. Just yesterday, we have released 19.9.
However, a letter from the Army to the committee, on the other hand, shows that there was a shortfall of 50 billion naira.
If you say you have made a release of 100%, here is a letter indicating that from the time of the introduction of Operation Lafia Dole, they have a shortfall outstanding of 50 billion. So if you are paying them 100%, how come do they have a shortage of 50 billion?
This, the committee believes, is capable of hampering the operations of the army in tackling the rising insecurity in the country. The committee therefore resolved that the issue cannot be settled in the absence of the minister and service chiefs, as they were invited to appear before the committee on the same day. It also resolved that the minister should appear with details of release of funds to who, dates, and for what purpose such releases were made from 2019 to date.
Joining us now is Dr. Abiodun Adeniyi, Associate Professor and Head of Mass Communication Business University. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll start from the top. For a few weeks now, we've been talking about, of course, security issues. But before we talk about security itself, the other aspects of it, especially as a teacher yourself, what has happened to a lot of tertiary institutions and some other smaller institutions in the past few months that have become targets, soft targets of bandits across. So what psychologically is it affecting, the academic environment, even though maybe some other institutions this side may not have, had first-hand experiences, but when you hear of this, especially to also your colleagues, how is it in the academic sphere?
Most certainly. Thanks for having me, first of all. But it will definitely affect studies and the scholarship process, because it's a process that needs peace of mind, that needs focus, and that needs you to have a predictable environment, because intellection thrives in a system, in an orderly environment. But when you have this fear at the back of your mind, that something awry might happen, then you become worried, So it doesn't matter that it's not even happening to you. If it's happening within your environment or around places where you can easily identify with your territory, you get also disturbed, consistent with the understanding around, the feeling of community. That feeling of community will definitely steer some concern within you. But most importantly, I think it's also very good for us to understand the dynamics of crime. Criminals target the vulnerable. No criminal will venture into an area if it does not, first of all, imagine, ways of exiting. Our institutions, many of them, are not really in a state where you say they are salutary. Facilities, infrastructure, have made them very vulnerable. Perimeter fencing is nothing to write home about. And of course, some of them are located in distant places where criminals can come in and exit at will. They think about this, the vulnerability is there. Maybe going forward, we need to think about infrastructures around these institutions, increasing perimeter fencing. Of course, technologies are also there for us to think about. And of course, what about security personnel, stationing them, around those institutions, or having them ingrained within the students themselves. But again, it's also very important for us to know that we're in unusual times. How do we create a new form of consciousness among the people, realizing that these are not regular times? How do we become more increasingly security conscious, like we see happen in some other countries? Like these decisions we take, how do we make sure that those decisions are influenced by security considerations? I want to travel now. Is it safe for me to travel? The time I'm going to travel, should I go in the morning or or should I go in the evening? Should I go alone, or I should go with a group of people? I mean, just to increase some level of, just to give some level of safety to my trip. This consciousness need to be ingrained in us, given the times that we are in. And beyond the students as well, even the populace, the working population, need to be conscious of this new situation. Yes, government, they are having discussions. We need more and more of these discussions. But beyond this top-level discussion, we also need the permeation of this discussion to the people at the lower rung of the economic ladder, because most of the time they're the ones that are victims, they're the ones that are vulnerable. Information has to be passed on to them. First, for them to know what government is doing, and second, for them to also be integrated, for them to know the new things that they need to do, to mitigate or to prevent these criminal acts from being perpetrated. Criminologists will tell you about criminogenic situation or actions and environment that precipitate crime. We need to be conscious of these, mitigate them, reduce them, so that yes, we do what has led to these criminal activities, but in the immediate circumstance, there are some measures that we can take, and these are some of these measures that I've tried to highlight.
Well, some have said, just like you have seen in one or two of those reports, in terms of huge releases, especially to the security agencies, and talk about the army, for instance. Some are saying that in situations like this, a lot more should also even be put into issues of intelligence gathering to foster some of these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes the beggars believe. In the last 12 years I've been dealing with insurgency, of course we hear about trillions released, and you wonder, like I said somewhere else, you wonder how much the insurgents or the criminals actually have. That we're spending trillions to deal with them, and we haven't been able to deal with them. So we'll be asking some of these questions, but again, it's not too late, and that's why we talk in terms of short, medium, and long term. It's not too late for us to sit back, reflect, and see how well we can make sure that funds are released, but it's not just to release funds, that the funds are actually meant for what they are released for.
All right, moving on, of course, I will still take a few of those, stories, especially the ones that are surrounding security. But we'll move quickly to, politics, a bit of politics now. The Senate says it will enact laws to improve the electoral process in Nigeria. Senate President Ahmed Lawa made his statements while declaring open a public hearing on a bill to establish the National Electoral Offences Commission.
In Nigeria in recent times are said to have been bedeviled by electoral offences. However, the inability to prosecute offenders still leaves a gap in the electoral system. The bill for an act to establish the National Electoral Offences Commission is therefore to take the responsibility of ensuring that electoral offenders are prosecuted and convicted if found guilty.
Our task here today is to examine all sides and provide insights as qualified stakeholders.
Like any other bill, it is an imperfect proposal that will improve as it makes its way through the legislation process.
The process will soon be concluded as we are presently working with stakeholders.
A cross-section of stakeholders gave their submissions on the importance of the bill to Nigeria's democracy.
We would like to see more prosecution of offenders, not just of ballot box snatchers and falsifiers of results of election, but most importantly, their sponsors.
This is an important bill in the electoral reform agenda, and we look forward to its success.
With the outcome of the public hearing, it is believed that the 9th Assembly is committed to ensuring that the bill becomes an act.
And still on elections, we have a report on the stakeholders and INEC collaborating to ensure the inclusion of persons with disabilities in the electoral process.
Ballot papers are placed up high, where it becomes difficult for someone who is on wheelchair or someone who is on all fours on the ground to be able to access. Sign language interpreters were not in place.
These are some of the challenges infringing on the rights of persons with disabilities to participate fully in electoral processes. To protect this right, INEC and the Albino Foundation have developed a disability guide.
This workshop is therefore to sensitize INEC officers on disability inclusion.
We've had discussion, even with the chairman, that every electoral material for persons with disability should be designated as essential material. And I can assure you that that will be done with the off-cycle election that is coming up in Anambra.
We could take this advocacy straight even to the political parties, where the political parties need to look at their constitution.
Officials say innovations have been put in place ahead of coming elections.
Being the training and research arm of INEC, we are going to develop modules really to train people on this new process and procedures.
Hopefully, the development of an implementation model and training of INEC officers on this issue will increase access, participation, and inclusion of persons with disabilities in electoral processes in Nigeria.
All right, that's a good one, especially we seem not to think about this much. But of course, we know that INEC brought in Braille for, people with, visual impairments and all that, but more still needs to be done. Yeah, obviously, improving our electoral process is a continuous thing. It's not a one-off thing, and it's good to know that we're already preparing, with consideration for all these sectors. Do not forget that the last election too, we know there were improvements, consideration for the disabled. Now we're expanding the range of disability to talk about those who are visually impaired. And the general election is just less than 2 years away, so it's gratifying that INEC is thinking in this direction. And the bill is also a welcome development. Do not forget that the bill is further to the recommendations of Justice Uwe's panel about a decade ago, that said, okay, INEC should be devolved, it should be compartmentalized because it is too heavy as it is now. And if it is too heavy, it will affect productivity and efficiency. So we trust that the National Assembly will be able to act very fast on this bill alongside other bills, ahead of presenting it to the executive for their signature. If all these things can come together at the end of the day, then we should have a better election in 2023. But again, there are concerns, about the election, particularly because of questions around insecurity. But beyond the kinetic, hard power to resolving the insecurity question is for us to also understand that, insecurity perpetrated by people down there, it's a byproduct of the many contradictions we have in our system. And that's why concern should be also be ramped up in the area of improving or alleviating poverty. Because poverty essentially leads to deprivation, and when people are deprived, they think of criminality because it is innate in the human being to survive. Remembering that these ones who are perpetrating this crime, have a patently empty sense of the self. And when they have that kind of psychology, they do not value you. They do not value your own life. Their sense of humanity is diminished considerably. But it is the onus is on us not to leave them alone, to wrought damage on our system, but for us to rise up to the challenge and to try to resolve it. Some would say, the National Electoral Offences Commission, as lovely as is beautifully couched, are we not trying to treat the symptoms rather than the disease itself? Because can we incentivize, for instance, the process in such a way that even before you think of coming to the podium, you have something to bring, and then people with criminal minds or thugs and all that, from beginning ab initio, they've been dissuaded from the process in the first place. Instead of thinking about addressing the offenses at the end of the day.
Your question is very valid, Fisayo, because you also look at it within the bigger picture of fighting corruption. If you look at EFCC headquarters now, the new EFCC headquarters in Jabi Airport bypass, it was built with about 20-something billion, standard headquarters. And you'll be wondering that the essence of the headquarters is to apprehend offenders, then you'll be wondering, why is it not possible for us to deploy resources into prevention? So if we had been able to prevent in the past, we probably would not need that kind of headquarters, or ICPC and all those things. But because we are probably not been able to prevent, that's why we are concentrating on sanctions, on prosecution and sanction. That's where we are for now. And bring it down to the electoral process as well. I mean, it's going to be a long battle for us to fight, because you are dealing with quite a problematic political economic questions of poverty, question of die-hardedness for material acquisition.
And of course, you have to put in the new cycle of podium, ballot, and then court.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long-drawn thing. We have to look at it within our problematic value.
Because I think the politician has to keep that money for court aside for lawyers to, at the end of it. Let's move on very quickly for this one. In its bid to harness the leadership capacity of young Nigerians for national development, the African Development Congress, ADC, has offered entertainment stars free tickets to run for elective positions in future polls.
This is a learning platform. We're not just a political party.
The national chairman of the African Democratic Congress, Ralph Okenwoso, while receiving a certificate of endorsement to the party from an online poll as a youth-friendly platform, advanced reasons for the choice of free tickets for the celebrities. Major among the reasons is what the chairman described as the entertainment industry's impressive contribution to the nation's GDP.
I have all reasons to believe that the youths are ready to drive the National Transformation Initiative that is well captured in the ADC manifesto, hashtag a new Nigeria at adc.com.
ADC National Youth Leader Maurice Ebam reaffirmed the party's commitment to addressing the concerns of the youth as future leaders.
All right, we have off-cycle elections and in Anambra coming up. Your last line on the show on this, and efforts, already been put in place to, have a hitch-free exercise, and looking at the backdrop of, the security challenges we are in a few short moments.
Yeah, but I think the point has been made that off-cycle elections are actually preparatory to the general elections. The INEC usually use it to test some of their experiments, some of their preparations. It can actually be preparatory in terms of watching arrangements and see how well they can perfect the process ahead of the general election. So it's a welcome development. We're all looking forward towards that election, and because resources will not be stretched, we do not expect anything to go wrong. And INEC has also said that it's only after the election that they will release they will be definitive, they will release specifics, for the timetable ahead of the general election. So we're looking forward to all this. We can only be optimistic, but more importantly, like we've been emphasizing, is the need for us to deal with the question of insecurity, which we are addressing. Conversations are going on in the National Assembly, in the executive. Everybody is concerned, but beyond, top-level conversation is also the need for information to permeate the dimensions of the society down to the people, so that they can also be aware and take some necessary precaution, even if we are not necessarily blaming them. But overall, they are often the most affected, in this crisis.
Thank you very much. That has been a political update for today on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Stick with the NTA for your news reviews, previews, and interviews over this weekend. And of course, play your politics for the greater good. Bye-bye now.